and welcome to the PhD Life Coach podcast. And this week's episode is actually something that we've never done before. Those of you who've been listening for a while will know that occasionally I have either listeners or members come on to have one-to-one coaching with me on a variety of different topics. But this week, I've actually got two of my current PhD Life Coach members on the episode to both be coached today. And the reason we thought this would be a really fun thing for you to all listen to is because, as you'll hear in a second, both Kate and Janice have a sort of similar situation at the moment. They're both part-time students with full-time jobs, which I know will resonate with lots of you. But we thought it also reflected a bit more what we actually do in the PhD Life Coach membership. We have online group coaching where you get to hear other people getting coached in a webinar format, as well as getting coached yourself. So how today is going to go is that I am going to coach Kate, and I'll get them to introduce themselves in a sec. I'm going to coach Kate while Janice listens, and then Janice will come back on and we'll have a bit of a chat about what she took from listening to the coaching. And then Janice will come on for coaching while Kate listens, and then Kate will pop back to talk about what she took from Janice being coached. You guys get to listen to all of it. So you get to hear two different people getting coached on this. Even if you're not a part-time student with a full-time job, there will be lots about time management and prioritization and self-care and all that good stuff that we all need to think about. And you'll be able to see how beneficial it can be to hear other people getting coached and apply it to your own life. So thank you both so much for agreeing to come on. I'm super excited to have you here. Let's go ahead and do some intros. So Kate, do you want to tell us a bit about who you are and what you're researching?
Hi, so my name's Kate. I work in the NHS as a nurse, and I am working clinically and doing a PhD via prior published works at the moment. So I'm writing up other work that I've done. I'm year 2 of a 4-year kind of contract with my organisation. So I'm halfway through, and my research is based on the impact of fresh air exposure for patients in intensive care.
Perfect. So your PhD is kind of connected to your work. You've still got the clinical duties associated with your actual job. Yeah, amazing. Yeah. And Janice?
Hi everyone, I'm Janice, and I also work as a nurse in the NHS. I am an infection prevention control nurse consultant. I'm doing my PhD. I'm in my 2nd year as well of a 4-year programme, and yes, juggling, doing both.
Perfect. And your PhD is connected topic-wise as well, isn't it?
It is. I'm going to be looking at antimicrobial resistant bacteria and how we can better fight against it.
Amazing. So, as I said, Janice, we're going to get you to turn your camera off, but you will be there in the background listening in. Usually in the group sessions, people are then contributing in the chat and things as well. And we will have a chat, Kate, and then Janice will come back in a bit. So give us a little bit more kind of context for what's going on for you at the moment, what's feeling challenging.
So this year I have I've been off work for a bit because I've been unwell. So at the moment I am trying to manage the transition back into both roles. So my PhD and my academic work, and then also my clinical work. And both of them have competing pressures and competing challenges. And I find it very hard to be able to manage and rationalize the time I'm spending on each area. So I find that my operational job can sometimes feel that I have to be as present as I possibly can, and I have to be managing all the operational pressures that we have, and I have to be supporting the team. And it feels like when I'm trying to manage the competing pressures of clinical stuff and non-clinical stuff, I will always find it very difficult to find that balance. And I feel guilty and harassed when I'm trying to do one and I'm thinking about the other. So I find it very hard to switch between the two roles. And I think that also fits with the fact that I've also got family, and I've also got, friendships, relationships, stuff out of other work, because I'm somebody who takes on lots of other things, very good at saying no. So I think probably my question is about managing transitions between two roles and two challenges, but also I've just come back into clinical work, and I'm about 5-6 weeks in, and I found that transition back in much harder than I expected to. And then I'm finding the transition back into my academic work as hard, but in a completely different way. So it feels like my I've got my confidence back up in one half of my life, but I'm now trying to pull the confidence up in the other half of my academic life. And that was reflected when I've been struggling to write something that I can absolutely know I can write. My tone of writing in my piece is lacking in confidence, I would say. So I sent it to a friend to read it for me, and she said, well, this is great, but this isn't how you write. This is a different style of how you normally do it. Like, she's like, you need to say, be more confident, be more bold, be more, own the page a bit more. So it's just how I can build my confidence up academically after some time away, and how I can sort out that balance.
Perfect. So help me understand it a little bit more in terms of your confidence. What sorts of things are you finding yourself saying to yourself when it comes to getting back into doing the PhD work?
I think I feel more anxious to submit, because I'm looking at submitting this paper, and I've been writing. So this is a paper that I was meant to finish in the summer, and then I'm 6 months after I wanted it to be submitted. So I kind of, in my head, I'm saying, well, you're late already. You've already let yourself down because you're already 6 months later than you wanted to be. And that it is because I'm a bit later and I've had a break from it, you then takes you a while to get back into it. And so I'm finding that kind of getting back into it a bit harder than I thought I would do. So I'm having to reread lots of the papers that I have read previously and I know, but I've forgotten bits of it. I think because I've forgotten bits of it, all that anxiety about having to know the topic so well, so you've read everything, and you feel completely prepared to be able to write down your argument coherently because you understand the evidence base as well as you can. So I think it's that confidence about the evidence base probably that is, I've lost it a little bit. And I think it's because I'm late in getting to this stage, because I thought I would be further on, I kind of feel a bit cross with myself and a bit kind of frustrated. And then because I'm cross and frustrated, I think I'm under more of a time pressure. So I found myself looking at the 2 weeks before Christmas, and I'm not working Christmas this year. And this is the first Christmas I've had off in my whole career since having maternity leave. So I've never had Christmases off, like I've never had a full 2 weeks off at Christmas ever. So I really want to take a break, but I also really know I have to get this stuff done. And then I kind of feel like I've lost my confidence and I'm behind the curve.
Okay, perfect. So you mentioned there that you're having to revisit things because of the time away. Tell me more about why that's a problem.
It feels irritating, and
Mm.
it feels like I'm behind. It's just a reminder every time that I have to look at something again. You should know this. You are behind the curve. You should have done this earlier. This you shouldn't be doing this now. And I know why I didn't do it now. I know I couldn't have done it previously, but I'm finding it very hard to switch off that kind of critical bit of my brain, which is you're not where you thought you were going to be, and being still quite angry about not where I thought I was going to be, which I know is nonsensical, but is hard to come around to.
Why is it understandable, not nonsensical, to feel like that?
Well, it's understandable because being unwell was unexpected. It was, it's normal for me to be angry. Like, my brain tells me that all the things that I'm feeling and all where I am is exactly where I should be, and I had no control over it. But I think because of the operational pressure that is in the NHS all of the time, it feels like there is a mandate all of the time that you should be working at 120% all of the time. And if you're not working at 120%, that you're kind of somehow doing yourself or somebody else a disservice. So I'm just trying to negotiate to myself, and trying to notice why I think I feel quite angry that I'm not where I wanted to be. And I've kind of got there from my clinical bit. So I'm like, I feel like I've come to terms with it for my clinical bit because I couldn't have physically done it. But I kind of keep thinking, well, I should have maybe when I was in bed, why didn't I keep reading these papers when I was in bed?
Mm.
And I realized how naughty that sentence is. And I realized that's a stupid sentence. Like, I should have done more while I was sick in bed. I realized, yeah.
Okay. So one of the things, so for everybody listening, I know Kate and Janice reasonably well. They've been members for a little bit and we've coached before. And one of the things I want to kind of just reflect back is the words you're using to yourself. Okay. You're telling yourself your thinking's nonsensical. You're telling yourself it's a stupid thought, all of these sorts of things. Okay. So there's the level that you're criticizing yourself for not being where you thought you would be. But there's also a level to which you're criticizing yourself for not handling this better, for not being able to think the thoughts that you know are sensible and cognitive.
Yeah.
Okay. And I want us to be really careful of that bit of judgment too. It happens quite a lot with people who have been coaching for a little while and kind of think, I should be able to regulate all my thoughts by now. Yeah, we can get a bit perfectionist with coaching too. I see this quite regularly, and I've had it myself. Okay. So tell me why it's completely understandable that you're feeling like these thoughts are stupid.
I think it's because I feel that I feel like I've made real strides this year. Like I'm quite proud of myself, of the work that I've done and the publications that I've managed to get out, and I've managed to kind of feels like for the first time in this whole process, I've started enjoying it. Like I think for a lot of the first bit, I was terrified and had huge imposter complex. And then I kind of found this community and found a level of peace and a level of calm. And I'm really frustrated that I found that peace and level of calm. And then I became unwell. And now I'm just trying to kind of, and I feel like all the stuff that we do, all the coaching that I've listened to, all of the models, everything, I feel like I should be, I shouldn't be feeling this way because I know it. We've talked about it. We've done all of this stuff. And so I think I'm a bit like, oh, I thought I would be better. I thought I would be better at dealing with this than I am, which is, I think I just thought I was more in the middle. And then this has kind of knocked all of my confidence about how I manage myself. So I think it's been a confidence knock just in lots of different ways that I didn't expect, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. And this is so common, right? Because people come with one problem. You didn't know you were going to get ill when you joined the membership. You were mostly focused, I think it's fair to say, on the kind of time management element of it, that you got this very, very busy, very important, very pressured job. And the PhD was very important to you, and you wanted to kind of be able to balance all of those things and work out how not to stretch yourself too thin. And you then made huge strides in how you were managing your division of time and your time blocking and the thoughts about what level of perfection you were expecting from yourself and all of these sorts of things. You made huge strides. What I think is really important to recognize is that when a different challenge comes along, we have to readdress that stuff. We don't, coaches have coaches. There's a reason that just cognitively knowing this stuff isn't sufficient to just be able to, I can just apply it to every area of my life now, sort of thing. So we got now this new situation. I know it's not new for you, but as in it wasn't what you anticipated joining the membership for. And we get to think about, right, how do I want to now adapt and apply some of these things that I've learned? Yeah. Okay. And one of the things I'd really encourage you to do is be kind of gentle with yourself on that. It's not easy to apply them to a new situation. You're in a kind of new, more challenging situation than you were before, which means we get to kind of re-practice in this situation.
Yeah.
How does that feel? Kind of just reminding yourself that it's completely normal not to be able to just self-regulate into the new challenge.
I think I hadn't thought about it in that kind of a concrete way. I hadn't thought about it that the reason I'm frustrated is because I thought, well, I've learned all the, I've got your tick sheet. I know what to do. I like a plan, I like a process. I was like, well, I've gone through the process, but it still isn't where it was before. So I think it's really important to say, well, you actually have to relearn this. You actually have to do this again. And I think you think sometimes in skills acquisition, well, I've learned all the skills, therefore I should just be able to apply it. And actually, it's not really reflective of real life. And I think that's the thing with maybe lots of people who are doing PhDs in academics and who are balancing lots of things. We're used to having a recipe, doing it, being able to do it, and then just being okay.
Yeah.
And I think probably I underestimated this as a new chunk of the challenge.
Yeah. And from the membership, I love an analogy, right? And particularly an analogy that's sort of specific to the person I'm working with. What advice would you give a newly qualified nurse who's like, I've learned all my skills, I've done my clinical training, I've qualified, I'm a nurse now, who then finds themselves in ICU or whatever, going, whoa, this is a whole other ball game than when I was on placement?
I think I would say every day and every challenge is new and different, and you have to come at it with the toolbox of skills that you've got, but recognizing that actually it's about skills acquisition over a whole career. And each time you do something for the first time, you're an amateur. So you have to work out how to do it. And it's okay for it not to be perfect, because nothing in life is perfect and nothing in life is a straight line. And it's all, tricky and challenging. And actually, just being in the race is hard enough. So well done for just joining the race.
And how does it feel if you reflect that back at yourself?
Compassionate and kind and relaxing, and takes a lot of the pressure of, I should be better than this, I should be further along than this, I should be able to cope with this, or I've learnt the rules, I should just be able to apply them. I think that reflection that coaches have coaches, I think, is really important as well, because I think you kind of think, you've learned all the skills, therefore you should just be able to apply them all the time, and that just isn't true, is it? It's just not true.
No.
You just can't sometimes.
And people listening might be interested, and Janice might be interested, listen to this, that we're not actually talking about your confidence in your academic skills at the moment, because I actually don't think that's the first layer of this. I think the first layer of this is the extent to which you're beating yourself up for not managing this better, that you're not being patient with yourself, and you're not understanding that this is exactly where you are, and not not doing all this emotional stuff. And I think if we can start there, I think the actual building of the academic confidence will come with time. And I think, obviously it's something we can talk about in other coaching sessions in the membership, but this self-judgment that you should be able to be managing all of this makes it so much harder to be kind of creative and patient and all those things to build the academic skills.
Yeah, it's like there's a voice in the room all of the time. The critical friend, that all of us have a critical friend in our head. My critical friend is on DEFCON, is really chatty at the moment in a really unhelpful way, which isn't, and I think and because I'm trying to manage the helpful friend and being like, I know that you're completely unhelpful, be quiet, that actually makes it even more frustrating. So you're right, it's that bit that's the hard bit to manage, because I know I can do it, because I've proved I can do it. I've proved that I can write, I've proved that I can publish, I know I can do it. At the moment, I just can't make my critical friend be quiet.
Yeah. Now, there's two things I want to say about that. The first, you mentioned that it was useful to know that coaches have coaches. I think the other thing to bring to that is, remember, and I'm sorry to have to break this to everybody, there's nothing about coaching skills or self-regulation skills or anything like that means you don't feel the crap emotions. There is no one on this planet where I don't think it's even possible to have the sort of self-regulation skills and I don't think it's even desirable to have the sort of self-regulation skills where you don't experience any of the emotions. And if that's the goal that we think we should have, that if I was good enough, if I'd paid attention in enough of Vicky's sessions, if I'd been the good enough PhD Life Coach member, then I would be able to not feel angry and not feel frustrated by this and not get, sad about it and all of that. That's not the end goal. The goal is to be able to feel these legitimate emotions, to know how to not make them worse by spinning stories in our heads about all the things they mean, and to have a safe place to return to. Okay? There's nobody who is completely regulated at all times. It's like trying to build a fence that doesn't wobble in the wind. It's not actually desirable. It's perfectly fine for you to wobble when you have difficult things happening in your life. The point is, you know where that point of balance is, where you've got skills that can help take you when you're down, and you know things that you can say to yourself, ways you can treat yourself to bring you back to a safe place.
Yeah. And it makes sense. Like the wobbling makes sense. Like I remember you said about tightrope walkers,
Yeah.
tightrope walkers wobble. And if you expect to be a tightrope walker and not wobble, that's not realistic.
Yeah.
Life is about being a practiced tightrope walker, is knowing how to get yourself back in balance. And the same thing is true on this.
Yeah.
I think I thought naively, and I know this is massively naive, that because I had been in coaching for a bit and because I'd done work and because I'd planned it and because I'd read loads of books, I was like, I'm ahead of, like, I get this, I can fix this. And I think I've realized that actually it's a bit harder than I thought. And I wasn't as kind to myself, that I couldn't fix it as quickly. I think the challenge is exactly as you say. I didn't realize how angry I was, and the narrative I was telling myself about not being able to fix it. So actually it was becoming a double beating.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I'd even be careful around the words fix it.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there is a fix it here. I think
Yeah.
it's a supporting yourself through it.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to pick up from what you said was around this critical voice. Okay. And you're right. We all have a critical voice, but you very much talked about it as something that's unhelpful and that you need to shut up. Yeah. Tell me more about how you feel about that.
I think that from your coaching and from trying to be more compassionate and trying to be a compassionate leader, I try and be really careful and with my patients as well. I talk a lot about the internal voice and about how if your internal voice is saying things to you that you wouldn't say to your best friend, then that's not a helpful internal voice. So I think I'm annoyed with myself that I can't apply the same principles that you've taught me and that I teach my patients about the internal compassionate, turning the internal critical voice into an internal compassionate voice all the time. Like I can do it some of the time, but I find it very difficult when the internal voice gets loud or when stuff goes wrong, because stuff does go wrong sometimes, doesn't it? You know, you make a mistake, or if you have a bad day or you haven't slept properly, I can't always turn the critical internal voice into a compassionate internal voice, even though I tell my patients to do it and you've told me to do it and I can normally do it. It makes me more frustrated that I can't turn the volume down. And in trying to turn the volume down, actually the volume goes up, because then you beat yourself up about that. That's another thing you can't do.
Yeah, no, definitely. And this is why I wanted to pick up on this, because I think this is something that is super, super common. And it's even common in the kind of pop psychology online advice space. This notion that we need to either shut up or turn down that voice. I really believe, and this, I think you're going to be able to apply stuff from your life for this, because I know you manage people and I know you have teenagers. So both of those things are going to bring skills into this. Okay. I think we should stop labeling our critical voice as unhelpful. I think your critical voice is trying to help. They're doing it in a misguided, unhelpful way. Just like a parent who's just nagging at their child. It isn't working. No one likes it, but they're trying to help. Yeah, this voice is trying to help. They're super anxious for you. They're worried you're not going to get your PhD done, all of this stuff. And the only tactic they have to go with is telling you you're rubbish and you have to sort yourself out. Okay. And I think the more we can see it as a kind of slightly misguided critical voice rather than an actually intentionally unhelpful one. You hear people talking about banish the inner critic and all of this. I'm like, no, give your inner critic a little hug. They're trying to help. They don't know what they're doing. It's not helpful. Okay. And I don't think we have to dial it down necessarily. I just think we have to know how to engage with it. So when I have, yeah, you talk to my family, I have a healthy internal critic, right? And I no longer try and dial it down, but I'll engage with it in a kind of like, yeah, I know you're worried that I'm not going to get this stuff done. It's okay though, because I'm going to do X and Y, and then the rest of it we can worry about another day. So don't worry, I got you. It's all right. I know you're just stressed out. It's fine. We're all good. And where you get to actually engage with that voice, not in a kind of, oh, okay, I'll do what you say, I'll do what you say, but in a, it's okay, dude, don't worry. You're flapping, it's okay. It's because you're stressed out that we had 6 weeks off or how long it was. You're worried about all of that. It's all good though, because we're on a new timeline, we've got a new plan, we know what we're doing next. We're not behind anything. It's okay. I've got you. And it's more of that kind of pragmatic reassurance rather than the trying to shut it up. Because just like with children, the more you just try and shut them up, the louder they get. The same as unhappy employees, right? The people you manage, if you're just going, yeah, you just need to be less critical, all right? Just shut up. I assume that's how you don't manage your teams at work. Be like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, it is pretty tough at the moment, isn't it? Yeah. And and by the way, for my internationals, National Health Service, when we're talking NHS, it's like, yeah, it's pretty tough here at the moment. I get it. That feels awful. Yeah. Well, we're going to do this bit and we're going to do that bit and we're going to not worry about the rest of it because that's outside our pay grade. We can talk like that to our critical voices as well.
Well, that's fascinating. I have never even ever thought about treating my critical voice like that. And that makes so much sense. Because you're right, the management style you would use with your colleagues is not having a go at them because they're raising concerns or they're getting histrionic. You wouldn't be like, no, absolutely. And that clearly won't work. So it's that whole application, isn't it? So I think that's really helpful, thinking about my critical voice as a, like an employee in my life, or I've got to listen and I've got to be calm, because if I'm calm, they'll calm down. Because if the more histrionic they get, the more histrionic I get trying to make them quiet. And actually, then it becomes a self-perpetuating cycle of then everyone's cross and stressed and it doesn't help. That's really interesting. I hadn't thought of that. No, that's good.
The other thing it's useful for is occasionally your critical friend's useful. They're just not saying it in a great way. Occasionally, so often my critical friend says, you don't have time for this, Vicky. There's just no way. There's too many things. And if I go, shut up, you're just being negative, leave me alone, not helpful. But if I go, okay, dude, you've been reminding me lots of times there's too many things. Is it possible there's an element of truth in this anywhere? Is there any bit of that I need to listen to? If so, what can I actually do? Is there something I could delay? Is there something I could decide not to do? It's like, we've all had them, right? People we work with who just moan about everything and you get in the habit of just not listening to them. And then every now and again they raise a thing and you're like, okay, yeah, that one's a fair point. We should probably listen to that one because they are quite sensible. We can do that. The more we can actually kind of almost listen to understand our critical voice, where it's like, I'm not going to listen to all your drama, but what are you actually worried about? Okay, yeah, you're worried about that. Right, cool. Is there any truth in that? Is there anything I actually need to act on here? But in that kind of calm, as you say, pragmatic way. And suddenly it becomes a very different conversation.
So is there something about, I'm just trying to operationalize it in my head of how I can listen to the critical voice, but also notice when they're being a bit histrionic and so, calm down when you need to calm down, but actually how to take the nuggets. Is that something that, so I reflect, because every day I've got a reflection like workbook where I work what I'm going to do in the day, what my objectives are, and I write a reflection of how I'm feeling in the morning, and then I reflect at the end of the day, which is how it's gone and what's happened and that kind of. So is that where you would put the kind of critical friend? And I find that's a good way of calming the critical friend, because it's acknowledging where they are, but it's also then about rationalizing it within, actually, you've done some really good stuff today, and then it layers into that. So is that where you would put that, or how's the best way to manage your critical friend?
I think there's different ways that you can experiment with. I don't think there's a one size fits all with it.
Yeah.
I'm a talk out louder to myself person. I find I do that more consistently than actually writing about my thoughts. I have probably a very unhelpful thought that I think too fast to write. Now, that's just like people who say they're too busy to meditate probably need to meditate. Someone who thinks too fast to write probably needs to write. But I tend to talk out loud to myself. Interestingly, I don't think you were in our coaching session earlier. Interestingly, one of our members read out a conversation she had with herself. So she'd actually decided, right, I'm just going to write down the things I'm telling myself, because she sort of had a side of her that was being compassionate, her version of compassionate. We talked about whether it was actually compassionate or not, and a version of her that was being very critical. And she actually wrote it down and read it out almost like a play. So there's that sort of approach where you could actually say, right, okay, come on then, critical friend, tell me, what is it you're thinking? Give me all of it. And then you go, okay, as boss Kate, we spent a lot of time thinking about the notion of you being a boss for yourself. As boss Kate, how am I going to respond to this person? I want to be the best version of boss Kate. I want to be calm. I want to be sensible. I want to be empathetic to their challenges. How would I respond to this concern? Yeah, so I'm listening, I'm taking from it the things that, where actually they might have a little modicum of truth in there. But I'm also filtering out the drama, helping them feel listened to, deciding what we need to move forward with. So I think there'd be a variety of different ways you could do that. And certainly if you've already got a bit of a journaling practice, then I'm a big fan of like building on things you're already doing.
Okay, no, that's cool. I like the because I'm quite a practical person. I like the whole kind of right. This is, and I can try and see if I can. That no, I think that would work. I like the idea. I wish I'd come to coaching earlier then about the play. That would have been fascinating to see and like hear.
Yeah,
that's why group coaching is really good, because you learn so many tricks from each other.
Yeah, definitely. Literally everyone with the chat was like, oh my God, this sounds like my brain. So I think even just that validation of knowing that other people have these ridiculous in inverted commas, ridiculous conversations with themselves, even just people seeing that like, oh, it's not just me. And I think especially at this time, we're recording this just before Christmas, although it will come out after the new year. At this time of year, that you need to rest. No, you need to get it done. No, you need to rest argument is happening in everybody's heads. And that was the sort of short version of what we talked about. And being able to actually visualize that and go, okay, hang on, I'm coming in. Pragmatic, sensible, calm boss who's got high expectations but cares is going to come up with a plan here. Okay?
I really like that. That's going to be something that is, really helpful.
Amazing. Janice, that feels like a good opportunity to bring you back in.
Hello. Excellent.
How are you feeling? What were you sort of thinking as you were listening to Kate talk?
There was so much there, and very much I could understand how you were feeling. It was interesting how you started off with frustration and anger and, being critical of yourself, moving to more of a relaxed state when actually you understand. And it's interesting how you use the analogy about obviously us being nurses. I think we are probably the worst at taking our own advice and looking after ourselves. We're the last to do that. So it was just interesting to hear you say that, what we would advise, but you weren't taking that on board. It was just so nice to see you relax in the end and actually realise that. And the other good thing was about who was it? The people who walked the tightrope ropes in the circus. And actually, if they were rigid, they'd fall off, wouldn't they? You've got to be a bit bendy. So we've got to be a bit flexible in life. And so therefore, we've just got to be able to flex with it and understand it. But it is completely natural that you feel that way, especially after having that period of time away. I think us as nurses and been in the job for so long, we can just go straight back into clinical practice and build ourselves. We don't have time to think, do we? Whereas this is all new to us, academic world. Even though we're in our second year, it's still different. It's different. Yeah. So you're doing amazing.
Thanks.
And how about for yourself, Janice? What did you take from it that you can kind of apply into your own situation?
It's interesting. It's so weird when you see another nurse speaking. I'm thinking, oh God, we're so hard on ourselves, aren't we? We are so hard on ourselves. And definitely that critical voice, um, self-sabotage for me anyway, self-sabotage. And I thought that negativity, we need to be more positive. We do work in very stressful jobs within the National Health Service, NHS. And it's so true as well about how operationally we function in the NHS. It is 120, 150% all the time. Anyhow, you drop down to 100%, then you're not performing very well. And we know that that's not the case, but it's like we're just constantly on the go, aren't we? So I think we just need to be a bit kinder to ourselves. And so it made me reflect about how I feel about everything that's happening at the moment with myself as well, and thinking, actually, I need to be kinder to myself. We've done well to get to where we are, and we can't forget that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Perfect. Let's move on to Janice then. So I'm going to ask Kate to turn her video off.
Thank you.
And maybe we can start from there. Why do you feel like you need to be kinder to yourself? What's going on at the moment?
I think very much what Kate was saying, clinically, we're very strong. We're in senior roles. We do manage staff and we manage to help with the organisation and everything. But this whole studying thing, it feels like, I suppose, how can I put it? I just keep harping on about when I was younger. I used to be able to study and I used to be able to do an assignment in 24 hours. You stay up all night, do your assignment, hand it in and be fine. And you just kept going. It's different now. I'm older. And for me, I have very much felt the early menopause and my dyslexia. I have really felt it this time. Even though you manage at work and it's your day-to-day bread and butter, you just keep going and you know your strengths, you know your weaknesses, you've got a team around you. It's different when you're doing your PhD. You're on your own, not on your own, but you're on your own, and you've got to come up with the work, not being too critical on yourself, but you are. And I think last year I spent the whole year on self-sabotage and am I really meant to be here? I do feel that I'm in a position now I can say, yes, I'm meant to be here, but it's just really difficult trying to manage the time, but understanding my dyslexia even more. I used to feel it's my superpower. I very much feel now it's a hindrance. And is it because I'm just not fast enough anymore? I can't read as much as I used to be able to read. I think it's just a completely different way of learning, and it's completely different time management skills that I used to have and that I currently have in my day-to-day job. So it's been interesting. So I spent the last year and a half, I feel, trying to find my way, my new way in studying. And at times, yes, I've got angry with myself and annoyed. But I think I've just allowed myself to be critical, but therefore understand that I'm in the best place I can be, and it's just going to take time. But it's still, that voice is still there, isn't it? Thinking you're not good enough.
No, definitely. And I think what's really interesting is how, if I was thinking of this as like an experiment that I was doing, there's a bunch of confounders here. Okay. So we're talking about how it might be harder because you're older.
Yes.
That it feels harder because you're menopausal.
Yeah.
And we have lots of members who are doing their PhDs later in life, both people who are menopausal, people who aren't. But you also picked up, and I think it's really important to recognize that this is a very different ballgame than academic stuff you've done before. And I think it sometimes gets underestimated because I think sometimes we sort of confound young and highly structured academic courses with older and very unstructured academic courses.
Yeah.
And we make it something about us. Now, I am the first to say I'm not going to like gaslight you about menopausal symptoms. All right.
Yeah.
There's definitely bits that this becomes more challenging. Don't get me wrong. But reflect a little bit more for me about the ways that the actual PhD process feels different than your previous academic stuff in ways that are maybe not just to do with you.
Yeah. It's the structure. It's the format of it. It's online. That's what I was trying to compare the other day. When I went and did my nursing degree, it was face-to-face, on site, doing it full time, not having to juggle working and that. You had classes, you had assessments, but it was all very practical. Whereas this is all online. It's not as often because you were in like 4 days a week. This is much different. And you're given, your reference lists and your modules that you have to work through, but you're not given any particular time scales. So it's so easy to drift and then go, oh, I've got to give my assignment in. Whereas when you're in university and you're there every day, everybody else, I suppose it's that peer structure around you that encourages you to carry on. Whereas it's different because obviously I've got my colleagues that I work with, my team, who may ask me now and again, how's it going? But my cohort's very small, there's only 8 of us, not necessarily that we all keep in contact during the month. And that's why I've surrounded myself within your membership as well as others, just to give myself that peer-to-peer support and co-working time and just motivation. Definitely that's what's different this time round. Yeah.
And I think that's so important to recognize, because otherwise it becomes this, I used to be able to handle it and now I can't thing. And yes, we need to be sympathetic to life stages and all that stuff and to health challenges and whatnot. But if we can recognize that actually it is a completely different ballgame, even if you have an active cohort, they're not going through in the same. People watching on video can see me doing like laddery hand gestures, where when you were an undergrad, when you were doing masters or whatever, your cohort were doing modules at the same time as you. You had assessments due at the same time, so you were kind of going through it step by step together. Certainly people that have trained in the UK anyway, you've sort of gone through these things together. And it may well be that some of the things like the dyslexia and stuff were better structured where it was more practical. There was less choice about what you do when, right? It's like this module, go do it. It wasn't, you weren't making decisions about when to work and what you were focusing on and all those sorts of things.
No, definitely agree. And I think maybe that helped me mask my dyslexia as well, and masked those key symptoms of being dyslexic in terms of time management, reading and things like that. It was just a lot easier. Whereas now it's very evident. Now I've got to manage myself.
100%, because I do think, and I'm not a clinician in this area at all, and I don't have specific training in this area at all, so this is opinions, nothing else. But I do think that there's a cluster of people that are high achieving people who have things like dyslexia, ADHD, for whom actually they can function within a structure. They don't necessarily do it healthily. They don't necessarily do it calmly and like in a steady pace, but the external structure of modules and deadlines and things like that, along with a healthy dose of kind of good girl syndrome and trying to, you know, I'm top of the class kind of vibes, mean that one way or another, they muddle through and actually get stuff done. And it might not feel great on the way, and we might pull some late nights and we might beat ourselves up about being disorganized and whatnot, but it kind of comes together in that more structured environment. And then suddenly you're in this environment and none of those things are there.
No, all those skills that I had learned before, they're not the same anymore.
Some of which were useful skills, and some of which were probably highly unhealthy, right?
Correct, exactly.
But they got you to an end goal one way or another, and suddenly they don't necessarily apply anymore.
Correct. And anyone who knows me knows I'm very much a high performer. I've always got to be busy. I've always got to be performing. I've always got to be doing, they used to say to me, another course, Janice, another course, another course. It's just the way I was then. But I'm slowly falling back into it, but it's taking me longer just to get into it. But yeah, it is definitely a different structure, and you're right. Maybe I need to be kinder to myself because it's different. Yeah.
And I think what would be really useful to pick up, just because you've said it a few times, and I feel like people have misunderstandings of it. What do you mean when you say kinder to yourself? What does that actually, to use Kate's words, what does that operationalize as?
Good question. It's the same what Kate was experiencing. I suppose I have that critical voice, and I'm like, well, you're not good enough. You don't know what you're doing. How could you not know what you're doing? You've got onto the PhD. You're here now. You're going to have to perform. They're going to find out that you don't know what you're talking about, which is, I know it's silly to even say it.
Not silly. Everyone says it.
My daughter's always saying to me, Mum, you've got your place. You're there. You know, of course you should be doing it, but it is a difficult thing to understand. And like you're saying, that suggestion to write it down and see that conversation that you have with yourself. I'm very aware of my critical friends. But yes,
what would kind look like?
What would kind look like? And like, it's interesting you said that earlier, that it's not normal. No one on this planet could ever not have any negative thoughts or any critical friend. So we're going to have them, aren't we? I suppose using it to make sure that it drives me forward, it doesn't hinder me, and I use it as a positive, and I use it in a good way rather than, oh, I can't do it and stop.
Yeah.
That would be a good way of doing it, a positive way.
Yeah, love. So just because you picked it up, this point about no one can not have these doubts, I want you to imagine, and I'm going to put myself out on a limb here, and I think this will make Kate laugh in the background. You guys have worked in the NHS. I'm going to guess you know some of these people. They probably are a different profession than the one you're in. Imagine a person who never entertains the thought that they have faults. They're probably in your organization, I'm going to guess. There might be a few.
Oh, yes, I think so. Yeah.
This is not where we aspire to be, right? We don't, there is something deeply unhelpful about never ever questioning yourself, never ever critiquing yourself. But we want to make it so that it's like helpful critique and not just mindless criticism. The reason I ask you about kindness is because I think it's a concept that ties people up in knots a bit. Because often, and certainly the conversation we had in coaching today, was this battle between the critical voice that was saying, you're behind, you need to crack on and get this done by Christmas, you need to cancel stuff so that you can work more. And then the kind, in inverted commas, voice that was saying, oh no, you've done your best, it's important to rest, and that sort of thing. And I like that voice to an extent, but I think it can become sort of almost two extremes, that on one hand, we're yelling at ourselves, and on the other hand, we're sort of almost being a little bit indulgent, a little bit like, oh, you poor little poppet, have a sit down.
Yes.
In fact, I don't know if you ever listened to it, but for people listening, and I'll tag it in the show notes, I did a podcast episode ages ago. It was one of like the first 20 or 30 I did, about talking to yourself as each of the different Winnie the Pooh characters.
Oh, brilliant.
How you can use it to like model different sorts of self-talk.
Brilliant.
I love it. It's one of my favorite episodes. Yeah. But I want us to just spend the last part of this session thinking about what would be a kind of kind but firm, kind but ambitious voice. So I want you to imagine, if you had a mentor, you don't want them, I presume, just to be like, oh, Janice, don't worry, you'll be fine, do it tomorrow, you're a bit tired. But equally, you don't want them to be like, Janice, you're so lazy, why haven't you done this yet? You want them to kind of have high expectations, but to then support you and make you believe that those are possible. So when you're thinking about, because we discussed previously about prioritization and that sort of thing, when you're thinking about your time management challenges and your prioritization, what would that sort of kindly, high expectations, supportive, ambitious sort of a voice sound like?
What is my goal? Reminding myself what my goal is and where I want to go.
Yep.
Have little milestones. I've only just introduced this because actually I never used to have that, but now I'm having to prepare things for over a longer period of time. I need little milestones. So I have a list and I tick it off, or I have a star chart and I put a star on it. You've
Nice.
got through that week. Yeah, my main thing is my goal, step by step. So by Christmas, I want to be at this place. I would have handed this piece of work in. And then, so I like to have my bigger picture now to say where I eventually will go, but then my smaller goals. And that's something I've just started to do.
And obviously that's something we structure out in the membership, right? In terms of our quarterly planning and mid-quarter reviews and all those sorts of things.
That helped.
But what would so you've given yourself clarity, you reminded yourself why you're doing it, all that good stuff. Absolutely love all of that. If you were then off track of one of those, so you haven't, I get this draft finished by Friday, it's Thursday night, it's not ready. What would that kind but ambitious, firm voice say then?
Just do it.
Okay.
Just get over it.
You know better than this, Janice. We banned the word just in the membership because just implies it's easy. So how can what would they say that doesn't involve the word just?
Get on with it. In reality, what will probably happen? Why have you left it this late? And why are you doing this to yourself? But what I should be saying to myself is, actually, don't, stop listening to this. But get on and do it. And then we will review again after you've handed it in tomorrow lunchtime.
Yeah. And it's amazing how hard it is not to say, just do it. So for those of you who don't know the reason, we ban that in the membership because just implies that it should be easy, that you shouldn't need to support yourself. You shouldn't need to struggle. Why on earth don't you just get on with it? But it's so habitual. And often people don't, I'm going to suggest some sort of phrases for you in a sec, because often people don't have a voice here. They have kind and indulgent, sort of like, oh dear, it's okay, don't worry, you've tried kind of vibe. Or they have critical, or they get to slightly exasperated, like you sounded there. Just get on with it. Come on, just do it. Yeah. And sometimes that's helpful, but I prefer a kind of calm, encouraging. So rather than a just do it, being more of a, okay, this is tough, you're exhausted. To be fair, I've had to do this to myself a lot this week. This is tough, you're exhausted, but we have got goals and they're important goals. So we can do this one next bit. I believe in you. We're only going to do it for 45 minutes. I ain't going to beat you up if it's not perfect. I ain't going to beat you up if we don't move as fast as we usually do. But we are capable of doing this next bit. We are not the sort of tired that needs to go and pass out for the afternoon. We're going to rest tonight. We are the sort of tired that I can crack on with this bit and do it well enough. Let's just get this bit done. Let's get this bit done and then we'll reassess. That sort of positive encouragement, I think, can be a really useful vibe, because otherwise you hear the exasperation in your voice. Otherwise, if you get into, oh, just get on with it, then we either get a bit defensive and start criticizing, or we collapse into the kind of indulgent thing again.
Agree. I like that. I'm going to start trying that now. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to bring Kate back on. So Kate, if you want to bring your camera back up. So how did you find listening to that, Kate? What were your sort of reflections and learnings?
So in the same way that you reflected that there were some themes in both of us because of our profession and because of where we work, I was equally reflecting on the same thing. And I think that your critical voice and my critical voice could probably be besties. So that's helpful. And I think that's probably, it feels, I wonder whether it's something to do with our profession, or I wonder whether it's something to do with our nature, because we've become nurses and we're part of a caring, relatively patriarchal system with challenges. So it was really interesting to reflect on that. I really liked the whole concept of the critical friend management system that we've come up with now during this thingy. And I really liked the confounding variables. So you said at the beginning, Vicky, you're like, right, well, actually, what are the confounding variables? If we were looking at this from a research perspective, what are your confounding variables? And actually, the phrase that I liked the most that you used, Janice, was you said it's a different ball game. And it's that bit, isn't it? That I think probably we think, oh, we've done courses before, we're driven people, we've got to where we've got to in the NHS, so therefore we should know all the rules of all the games. And then you start this new game and you're like, oh, I don't know anything about anything and I'm not really sure I should be here. Oh dear, what have I got myself into?
It's so
and I think
true.
I think it takes a while to feel comfy in that bit, to kind of realize that, you know, you're in the game, you wanted to be in the game, you've worked really hard to get in the game, you're now in the game and you're like, oh no, different game. Oh, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And I thought I liked Vicky's point about your calm, encouraging voice. And one of the things that we've talked previously about in other coaching with other students is about your CEO, your boss, and about what would your boss say. So I was thinking about your internal voice and my internal voice, and I was thinking we probably need to take them for a CEO meeting actually, and sit down and go, right, I'm listening to you, critical voice. I'm listening to you, side of me, which is like, come on, just relax. You've worked really hard. And then I'm also listening to the voice that is the mother, that is the wife, that is the volunteer, that is the manager, that is the, can we do X by tomorrow, etc. So it's about having kind of all of those voices and opinions around you, but being able to be calm and encouraging, because that's what CEOs need to be, which is focused, goal driven, realistic, but calm and pragmatic. And I think as nurses, we're very good at being calm and pragmatic. We're actually very good at it. And I think probably one of the issues that we both have is because we're quite good at being calm and pragmatic and sensible and get anything done, because that's what nurses are good at. Give them anything and they'll be like, yeah, we can find our way around them. We'll do it. I think it's about using that calm nursing CEO energy of, right, what are we going to do next? Let's just look at next. What's the next 15 minutes going to look like? What's the next half an hour going to look like? What's the next day? And not allow ourselves to get too far down that spiral of, well, I haven't done it by today, therefore I'm going to be I need to work Christmas Day. You know, it's
exactly. Yeah.
Pulling that back. So no, you aren't working on Christmas Day and you're not thinking, well, I can peel the sprouts while I'm reading that scoping review, because that's not appropriate. It's not what your CEO would say, is it?
Yeah.
No.
That's perfect. And both of you as members have access to my Christmas planning worksheet and workshop. They're both online now. So if you weren't there live, then you can plan your intentional holidays. The last thing I would add in, I love this notion of bringing like the different roles of yourself together and thinking, right, how are we going to actually work this out between us? And actually that intentional holiday planning workshop is really thinking about that. How can you look after all the different bits of you? And this is relevant to everyone, but it's particularly relevant to women of our age, I would say, is don't forget there is also the Kate and Janice, the human being. Okay, so there's CEO you and researcher you and partner you, mum you, whatever else you. There is also you. Okay, and I want you to make sure in any of these conversations, the you that wants to do just something just because it's fun or just because it's restful or just because it's joyous or whatever, that role needs to be in there too.
Agree.
So it's really easy, especially when, you know, when we're the sandwich generation with parents and kids and all that fun and games, it's really easy to forget that bit too. It's making sure there's space for that bit as well. Okay.
Agree.
So on that note, thank you both so much for your honesty and vulnerability. And whilst we've done this very much in the context of you both being nurses who are doing PhDs, I think it is super relevant to anybody who's come from any other profession. You know, we have people in the membership who've come from law and technology and all sorts of other places who have, you know, their own version of this challenge, and even people that have come straight in from undergrad and masters and who are now suddenly going, hang on, I used to be good at this and what's happened now? I think everything you've said is super, super useful for them too. So thank you both so much for listening. When this goes out, it's going to be the 12th of January, which means that the new quarter of the membership will be starting in 2 weeks' time. So make sure you're on my newsletter, everybody, so that you know when that's happening and you get all the invites, so that if you would like to join too, come and join Kate and Janice and all the rest of my community, then you'll have that opportunity as well. Thank you all so much for listening, and I will see you next week.